everyone. Welcome back to day 3 of the Healthspan Show. Really delighted to have you back with us. Thanks for joining once again. We've got such an important discussion lined up for you this morning. I think all of us can agree, looking back over the last 12 months, one of the sectors that has really been very heavily impacted is leisure and fitness. And I found it really ironic and strange because we've also known the importance of physical activity for both our mental and physical well-being. So we're going to address this topic today with a really, really wonderful panel. We've got a very, very rich group of people with a lot of experience and a lot of ideas and global perspective to come into this discussion. So we're going to examine the path to recovery, looking at the opportunity for fitness and leisure industry post-pandemic, and of course the opportunity for us as consumers and for the wider world to really embrace fitness and leisure. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our moderator for today, over to Kenny Butler from UK Active. Thanks so much, Kenny, over to you.
Thanks, Angela. Afternoon all, or evening or morning, or wherever that might be we're tuning in from. Thanks for spending the time with us to talk about the fitness and leisure industry. My name is Kenny Butler, as Angela said. I'm strategic lead for health and well-being for UK Active, which is an organization that represents the fitness and leisure industry in the UK. As Angela said, today's session is going to explore, the fitness and leisure industry. It's been one of the hardest hit, but yet evidence emerges every day pointing to the importance of movement and exercise and maintaining mental well-being, physical well-being, underlying health. So I wanted to discuss the path to recovery. We don't want to spend too much time on the pandemic, but we want to talk about opportunities. There are opportunities. And I'm delighted, slightly intimidated by the presence of so many big hitters here today in the respective fields, whether that be academic expertise, business leaders, commercial savvy entrepreneurs, CEO, MDs, global franchise operators. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I wouldn't do it justice. So I'm going to go around the table for a brief introduction before we kick off. And I'm going to go as I see people. Nicole, can you start?
Sure. First, thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here. I think this is a very important conversation and I'm excited to have it with all of you. My name is Nicole Nason and I am the Director of International Franchise Operations for Gold's Gym, responsible for 29 territories outside the US. And I've worked in the fitness industry for about 20 years now.
Thanks, Nicole. Daniela.
Hello, everyone. And of course, thank you for inviting me in this session. It's quite new for me. I mean, I'm more used to scientific context, but I'm very happy to be here. I am a university professor in exercise biology and genetics at the University of Rome Foro Italico. And so my research interest is much more related to exercise and health. And in addition, I'm also chairing an international Master of Science in Health and Physical Activity. So really happy to be here.
Thanks, Daniela. The science underlying everything that we are talking about with exercise and physical activity. Lene?
Yeah, hi, my name is Lene and of profession I'm a physiotherapist and managing director of Fit&Sund Fitness and Health Houses in Denmark. We are a franchise, and since the start of us in 2012, our vision has been building the bridge between the health sector and the fitness sector, and in other words, between treatment and prevention.
Thank you, Lene. Andy.
Hi, Kenny. Delighted to be here. I'm Andy King. I'm the Chief Executive of Link for Life, which is a leisure and cultural trust in Greater Manchester, but also chair of GM Active, which is a collaboration of 12 different operators across Greater Manchester, which between us, we have roughly 100 facilities, 3,500 staff, and very, very committed to the link between physical activity and prevention in terms of the health agenda.
Thanks, Andy. And Stephen.
Hi, everyone. Stephen Ward here. I'm with an organization called GoFit, which is based in Spain and Portugal. Wellbeing focused company focusing on exercise, nutrition, mindfulness, and recovery. Our company mission is to help people vivir más y mejor, which is Spanish for live longer and better, and prove that felicidad se entrena también, which means happiness is trainable as well. My role there is as Chief Transformation Officer, which means I'm responsible for our long-term strategy, understanding the trends impacting us as an organization, and the links between that and our product and what we do for our research, development, and innovation agenda.
So great, thanks, Steve. Amazing sort of pan-European expertise here as well to give us some insight on various territories. So look, our fitness and leisure centers are open in a variety of capacities across the continent, with group exercise in the near future here in the UK, for instance. But it's a mixed picture. You know, some chains are saying that there's, like Pure Gym are saying, like 1 million workouts took place in 240 sites that reopened, for instance. David Lloyd saying there's extremely positive uptake or return, you know, but the industry has suffered huge losses for lockdown and has called on governmental support. I'd like to discuss 3 themes today. 1, recovery; 2, development; and 3, diversification. I'd like to spend a little bit more on the diversification because that's exciting opportunities, as well as the core before that, though. So let's kick off with the recovery. The pandemic will continue to have transformative impact, and in all aspects of life, in our businesses and the fitness and leisure industry. So how do we expect the members, decision makers, influencers to approach this upcoming year and anticipated engagement with members in the wider sector? In other words, what in your mind is key for recovery in your business and space this year? I might just run right into it and kick off with, can I kick off with you, Andy?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, Kenny. Yeah, the recovery is strong so far. Like you say, we've reopened for the 3rd time with Group X coming on board, and the demand's overwhelming, to be honest. I mean, it's a very false picture in terms of sales, so to speak. But we're finding I think across the board a high demand, to the point that we can't cope with social distancing restrictions and things, particularly on swimming lessons and casual swimming and all the rest of it. So it's all bookable, it's all socially distanced, and so we've got capacity issues to deal with in the short term with the demand. But it's strong, which is great. Probably as we expected, possibly a little bit better, but further afield, really, it's in the public sector that I'm concerned with. Then it's what's going on in the background with local authority councils, and the discussion about the amount of support required as that income starts to come back. It's going to take some time. So the big question is, how long is it going to take before local authorities don't have to prop up operators such as ourselves? And during that time, what's going to happen? And already we're seeing some quite fundamental changes with operators, trusts being taken in-house, perhaps for political reasons more than anything else, but that's happening. So there's both opportunity, as we'll talk later, there's also some threat around as well, and some nervousness about what might happen to the public sector side of things. But from a consumer's point of view, very strong demand. We just need to see the back of social distancing and then see how we can get on from there. But yeah, the more fundamental aspect is the support required from local authorities, and above them, central government, basically. So a strong picture, but one with a note of caution.
And Steve, in Spain, from Ingesport perspective, what's your recovery looking like at the moment?
Well, Kenny, I think it's been going on so long. I'm not sure if we know anymore if we're in the stage of survival, recovery, adaptation, or some sort of reincarnation, or who knows. I mean, we reopened our doors for the first time in June of last year, and actually, in fact, in some of our locations, they haven't shut since. So we were able to work with some of our key partners, such as Madrid City Council, to establish the position of our centres and the role of our sector as absolutely essential to the health and well-being of the local community and their residents, and their resilience during the pandemic. So it goes without saying that those locations where we've been able to stay trading since that point are thriving. You know, they are absolutely thriving. They are deemed totally by our local customers as being safe, as being essential for them. And we are seeing levels of usage at those facilities broadly comparable, if not somewhat up on what they were prior to the pandemic situation. So that is causing, as Andy rightly identifies, quite substantial operational challenges with handling issues of capacity. But the ingenuity and creativity of the team in pretty much using every inch of space they can find on any roof or any land anywhere near our centres where we can essentially go and put our flag down and take over, we're doing that. So the story is somewhat different in other areas. You know, we need to understand we're obviously dealing with a health crisis and we're dealing with an economic crisis, and in some parts of the world those things are still very much live, and certain parts of Spain, which, you know, as a national economy, 20% of the GDP is linked to tourism. And we know what's going on with the tourism industry. We think we're a hard hit industry. Well, so in some areas we have a slightly different picture, but from all of the work we're doing around the world, tracking the evolution of the pandemic, we're very confident and assured about the prospects of recovery, the belief that our customers have in the value of our services, and the opportunities that we have in the year ahead.
Yes, various territorial challenges. Daniela, your university is a specialist university around movement.
Right.
You guys produce specialist sort of top scientific work, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and have graduates that feed into the sector, the fitness and leisure sector. Your interest in the fitness and leisure sector is adjusting from an educational job market / job market, I think. How is that? How is the recovery from that perspective, from your?
Well, in Italy, the sport and the leisure sector have been heavily affected by the pandemic because, of course, of the very heavy lockdown. Please consider that only outdoor activities with a special social distance was allowed, and the gym are still closed, and probably they will reopen again on June, hopefully, depending on the situation. So, of course, if we consider our primary stakeholders, that means our graduates and their family, for them this has been a very, very difficult period. From the point of view of the educational, of course, it's not easy to modify university programs, but of course, we try to adapt a little bit to the situation, maybe taking into consideration, just look into the recovery phase. And now I'm referring to the very, very short-term recovery phase, let's say 1-2 years. Hopefully, of course, that in 2023, 2024, this COVID pandemic could be over, hopefully. So, but in the short term, of course, there's been an adaptation also in the educational program, because we know that is a priority that our graduates also have in mind the possibility to design exercise programs or sport training, taking consideration the social distance, that they need to be able to convince people that has been isolated, and that with a very, very high increase in sedentariness. So we need to convince people to come back or to start physical activity. So some special, probably psychological or communication skills will be needed. And then if we think in 1-2 years to the individualization of physical activity, exercise, leisure program that we could have in mind, we should take in consideration that people that have been affected by this disease probably will have different requirements in cardiorespiratory training, in muscle strength and power recovering. So these are the different kind of aspects that we have been considering and that we are considering.
Yes. That behavior change, communication skills will be key to, it's a tough nut to crack, I think the saying is.
Very difficult to teach and to learn, actually. This is the main issue.
Lene, of the multiple houses, I think you call your clinics houses in Denmark, I believe, don't you?
Yeah.
The ones who are doing well, showing some personalization, I think you were saying before, and how have your multiple houses been recovering? And you also run gyms as well as physiotherapy.
Yeah, it's a one facility. It's a fitness and health house where both sectors are present. And one of our main points is to be close to our customers, to know them by face, even better by name. And the houses who has been doing the best are during the pandemic, and also on the other side now, are the ones who have been doing the best job in creating this atmosphere of closeness with their customers, who has been emailing them, calling them on telephone. And so people want to feel unique and seen and heard, and that's something we can see. And I also think that's when Daniela said, how do we get them to come back, the ones who are getting out of shape, because the very healthy people are still running and doing exercise outside and taking care of themselves. But the ones we really need to look at is more middle-aged, not so fit, but still come in our houses. And I think showing that our facilities is a safe environment to come to. And I was very happy to see all the data collection we had in the spring, last spring, about how few that really got the infection being in the gyms and things like that, really showing that we have the knowledge and the will to make it a safe environment so they can come.
Indeed, yeah. I think that's the same thing here. We've shown that it's a safe environment, 0.99 chances in 100,000 or something. Nicole, coming to you, with 29 territories in your jurisdiction, I think, I got a funny feeling that you have not been sitting back during the recovery, been relatively proactive, I think.
Yeah, very much so.
Tell us about that.
Well, when this first started, it was kind of like I felt like I was seeing, this tumbleweed down the road of what was going to be happening. And I really needed to jump into the deep end and go absolute worst case scenario and try and educate myself. And so where we started was, we knew the best case scenario was a vaccine globally, right? But that meant us sitting around and waiting for a long time. And it also meant no guarantees. And so the direction we went was taking a look at what is available on the market that is scientifically backed, that has been around for decades, that is safe for the environment, safe for human exposure, and actually impacts the health and quality and air control within our facilities. And ultimately we landed on something called DBD-BPI. It's DBD, bipolar ionization. And I'll try and keep this brief because it can be quite scientific, but essentially bipolar ions exist naturally in our atmosphere. They tend to exist in quantity above 6,000 feet and around waterfalls. And bipolar ions automatically bind with any sort of bacteria or viruses and break them down immediately at the molecular level. So of course, who, if you had to guess who discovered it, who would you guess? And it's Albert Einstein. So it's been around for a long time. We just haven't figured out how to safely replicate this. And there's still issues around that. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on it. Essentially what it means is there's lots of versions. There's several versions of bipolar ionization. The only one that's been given any sort of scientific credibility for safety above and beyond excessive levels is DBD-BPI. And the reason why we care so much about this as a company is because when this first started, we were all scrubbing equipment, right? Bleaching stuff, washing it down any surfaces everybody was really nervous about. And come to find out what we thought was the case, the CDC recently reported the beginning of April that less than 1 in 10,000 transmissions occur from the surface. So the transmission it's airborne, right? This is where the problems lie. And that means we need to be treating the air in our facilities. And we can't just think about this for now. We need to learn a lesson, which we as human beings can be really bad at doing, and figure out what is viable now and how do we make our facilities secure for the long term, because at some point in time, we will likely face another global pandemic, right? So how do we respond? That's our solution currently, and that's what we're pursuing and taking a very deep look at.
That's fascinating. I see the panel. Steve, I'll come to you. I see the panel taking a few notes here. That's going to be that's probably.
No, I think it's a very relevant point, because we go into this new phase, we have to think about what parts of this phase continue with us. And you know, flash back 18 months ago, and who would have thought that DPI would be part of our value proposition to customers? But in our case, you know, we are marketing to our customers the investment we've made in HEPA quality air filtration as part of the standard specifications of our design. So our air quality in our facilities is no less than you'd expect in an operating theatre. And this isn't just something for pandemics. This is the pandemic of air quality in our city centres is severe. You know, the particles that we breathe every day. And if we can talk about a more holistic approach to well-being, where we are as interested in the quality of the air that our customers are breathing within our centres, then that shows the level of care and quality that we wish to deliver in the experience for our customers. So I think that is something that we'll endure. And
that's an incredible effort that you've made to go that route, because as we all know, that's not cheap, right? Putting HEPA filters in everywhere, that's a cost to endure. And when we take a look at what, you know, where the best efforts are, HEPA is right at the top. The only downfall is if I walk in and I'm an infected person, and let's say I don't even know, and I'm breathing throughout the club, those molecules have to float up to the filter, get treated in order to come back down. And that's not likely going to happen if I sneeze, right? It's just going to move out into the air. And so going forward, it's, you know, there still needs to be a lot of scientific review. We need to understand a great deal more about this, but that's the leading, most active treatment that we've been able to take a look at so far.
Really important points. Thanks. That's fascinating, right? Like you said, Steve, who would have known about that piece of kit?
I never thought I would take a look at that in my life. I never thought I'd have this conversation.
As interesting as that is, I guess there's a few other things we should talk about, and thank you for bringing that up. I'd like to move on to the next sort of theme, perhaps, you know, talking about development, your core areas, perhaps. I'm sensitive that you guys, you know, you're in organizational restructure, as are we. Understandable uncertainties, there's processes, people development, we're reviewing organizational resets. With growing prioritization on personal fitness and well-being, supporting health, I think it's created an opportunity for us in the industry to design and deliver services that appeal, you know, to non-traditional members. You know, sessions, I suppose, with individual growth, peers, or is it going to be still high tempo, competitive, intimidating classes to provide the most direct path to membership growth? So, you know, how do you guys see your areas, core areas, I suppose, developing? And yeah, maybe Steve, I'll go to you first on that one.
Thanks, Kenny.
You're still thinking about ionization, aren't you?
No. I try not to. On the points about development, the key point I would make there is there's no other option at this time than to double down in your investments around development. I think it was actually KPMG who, long before the pandemic, I think it was 2018, basically did a major report which came up with this awful phrase of identifying a zombie company. And a zombie company was a company that was in a position that, although it wasn't quite dead, it certainly didn't have enough resources or means to live. It didn't have the capabilities to invest in R&D, to invest in new thinking, to energize their team with vision, because they're dealing with the stresses and the challenges of the day-to-day. And that was KPMG talking about the economy in general back in 2018. I think the reality of the pandemic is that it's made this situation only worse across all of the economy, not just in our industry. But we do now have the situation in our industry where we have vast numbers of companies that are in survival mode, and somehow we have to find a capability in our industry to reinflate ourselves again, to invest in innovation, to invest in new product, to invest in new models. And that's not going to be easy. For our part, the pandemic hit us at a point where we had some ballast in our position to be able to absorb the shocks. And from day one, our president took away the fear of, protection of our current situation and our jobs, guaranteed the salaries of our team, guaranteed the positions. And we set about a major investment program on our digital transformation, on our product transformation. And we find ourselves a year on having sort of insourced all of our technology team and made some major moves in that area. And we're better for it. But my hope is that as an industry, we're able to find some mechanisms and means to recommit to investing in development, not only in just survival, because that will be a key to each individual organization's success, but also our fate as a sector as well.
Well articulated. Lene, you say you're more than a gym. You've got a bit of a niche, I think, or is that what you're trying to find, a niche with Fit&Sund?
Yeah, you're correct. We are trying to find a niche where when you say more than a gym, I think all of us will maybe look for that in the future, more than a gym. But we look at the more than fitness and leisure, we look at fitness and health. And when we do that, we also try to paint a picture in the public that our health club or our fitness house is open for family, all three generations. We have products for all three generations. So it's not just for the hardworking, it's also for grandpa. We have groups for him, we have groups for the young, and that stabilizes our business, because the father don't join another gym if the rest of the family are in our gym. So it gets closer to home than just a gym, and that's what we have been working on. Yeah. And I also think that if we really want to be on the decision makers' mind in public health, we also have to sort of paint a picture of ourselves that shows that we take care of the people who are economic burden to the health. And that's not the young and very fit. That's a different group. So if we show that we offer activity, physical activity as, like say, the magic pill for life-induced sickness, that we are a place where there are room for the general population, we might get more, the decision maker will look our way in a different way, because we do take care of the ones who really are an economic burden.
Yeah. And preventing or delaying social care.
Preventing and delaying and keeping out of health, rehab,
And so, I've seen your bits and pieces of your strategy from Greater Manchester, and that's, how do you see your core areas of developing going forward?
Yeah, Kenny, I mean, it's much of the same, to honest, very much like Lene. It's about population health, and the transformation really from a leisure offering to a health and well-being offering or wellness offering, which we've been on that journey for some time, and bearing in mind that we're often commissioned increasingly rather than contracted by public health leaders and directors of public health, and we quite often sit in that sphere. But actually the links until COVID in many cases have been a bit tenuous. But through COVID, the way that our resources have been utilised basically by councils to engage with the communities and support the communities in very practical ways has given us an opportunity to build on that, those closer relationships where people have learned, I think, what we can do and our desire to help the communities and to go from there. So one of the things we're doing in Geomactive, there are many, but that's the general shift really from leisure to well-being. One thing we're seriously considering is, well, what does that mean to our staff, to our workforce? So we're creating a leadership program which is picking up on the Sport England new strategy, and it's very much to do with the collaborative leadership, working within a system, identifying those parts of that system on health to improve population health, addressing health inequalities, and we're putting together a training package for the leaders, and we're sort of targeting general managers and assistant general managers, because there are things out there for system leadership for directors and what have you. But actually, this has got to come from the ground up, really. This has got to mean, what does it actually mean to our staff? And it's quite difficult, it's quite challenging, but we'll have a program in the next few months that we intend to roll out across GM. Sport England are involved in that. We've just got some funding through the local pilot, which is Sport England money, to create this. And it's really understanding how we fit into a wider health ecosystem, and then what does that mean in practical terms. And the intention of that is that we will be able to point to our newly trained workforce and say, look, we understand more of these complexities from the last 12-15 months onwards, and we want to reach out and have the understanding and the empathy with the health commissioners so that we can be commissioned across at least a region in Greater Manchester's case. So that's where I would say the nub of it is.
Daniela, Andy's talking a lot about workforce there. I think, we, the industry, need a workforce to be able to cope.
Yeah.
Not just with COVID, but there's another pandemic that was really happening prior to COVID, and that was inactivity.
Yeah.
Obesity. Tell us what your thoughts are on that.
To be honest, Kenny, I'm not a little bit surprised, but okay, let's say that the fact that exercise is a medicine for health promotion, or is a fundamental in preventive medicine, is a scientific statement that has been very well recognized at governmental level. I mean, we should consider, for example, starting from the political declaration of the 2030 agenda, but also from the European Union. There is no doubt that exercise, physical activity, sport, leisure shall be considered an investment for the health sector. Okay. And of course, the problem is not the recognition at governmental level or the recognition at population level about, I think, of the role of be active in preventive medicine. The issue is more related to the fact to have the recognition at practical level, like, for example, exercise by prescription in some situation, of course, like the one that you were talking about, obesity, risk of cardiovascular hypertension, even in a young population. Exercise by prescription is needed, and this is not a reality everywhere. Actually, it's a reality in very, very few countries. The second point is the qualification of the workforce, as you were telling. Of course, we are providers of bachelor and master and also PhD graduates in this area, okay? And what I think, this is my view, but of course, in general, the view, if that the fitness and leisure wellness sector would like to develop, to have a development with respect the health enhancing physical activity or disease prevention, whatever you would like to call, it's fundamental to recognize the needs of some specific qualification. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult to convince government to invest or to include as a whole the fitness compartment within the health prevention sector. But I fully agree with all of you. I mean, we need leisure, physical activity, we need sport, we need exercise. Please just consider that, for example, in training a future physical education teacher, you know that in schools we are having physical educators, okay, specialized now everywhere. They need to have a Master of Science to teach physical education. Physical education, as we knew in the past, does not exist anymore. In all Europe, physical education teacher shall be someone able to teach health-related physical education. This is because the full recognition at governmental level of the value of physical activity in health prevention. But I think that the world fitness sector should be able to recognize this added value also with the identification of specific qualification in the sector.
Thank you. We're touching on some solutions, and I would like to get to that soon after I hear from Nicole. Nicole, briefly, before we get on some solutions, you know, I think that's going to take up a good chunk of the last half of this, and rightly so. What's going? We talked about knowing your audience. We talked about you know, fitness industry being able to follow instructions and guidelines. Talk about your core development areas.
I mean, historically, we've always done our best to make sure our facilities reflected the community, whatever that might mean, right? So whether we're basing it on demographics or health need or availability, we do our best to make sure that that's how we prioritize internal operations. But I think that there's absolutely room for improvement now in that. And I think it comes down to a lot of different factors. Some of it comes down to how we actually take a member through the course of joining a gym. Have they never done so before? All the way through to, you know, when you and I spoke, I talked about how I'd love to see our personal trainers start being able to access some kind of mental health certificate. Mm-hmm. We have been, for a great many years now, doing an excellent job of ensuring our trainers get certified, that they get a proper education, and that they then turn around and follow the skills that they are taught as they're instructed to do so on the gym floor. And so I don't see any reason now why we can't start moving into educating them on mental health and different triggers in individuals, just like we would physical injury, so that we're catching something and saying, you might need to go to the physio, you might need to go and see your doctor. We shouldn't be doing this today because of A, B, C, D, or E. And I think that would help increase the value of a health club to its community. And I think we would overall be impacting, you know, the evolution of the value of the health club industry for the long term. There's, you know, you and I talked even briefly about putting a DJ booth, something as simple as putting a DJ booth in a club, but where people can go up to a live person and request what they'd like to hear when they're exercising. I mean, it fits no matter what genre you're talking about. I mean, how much do people love being able to do that? And I know that folks have music in their headphones nowadays, so much so that there are clubs that don't even play music anymore. But I think that's because we've gone, oh, we don't need to do that, as opposed to going, can we provide a better environment here? And what does a better environment look like? And so I think there's a lot of opportunity if we step back and look at how our gyms have operated for the last 50 years and go, is that reflective of what the community needs today?
Yeah, totally agree. Speaking of opportunities, I would like to talk about what the opportunities are for us here, what opportunities for patients, opportunities for people who are not engaging with us at the moment. Just to set the scene a bit, you know, the fitness and leisure industry is an engine room. Outside of incidental walking, in the UK, for instance, 17 million people get active in their CMO, the Chief Medical Officer guidelines per week on a normal week. It's not normal these days, but you know, that's without any real governmental strategy. We know there's societal value in being active. We know there's massive savings for healthcare, reduced GP visits. 2 out of 5 GP visits unnecessary. Imagine if we did something strategic, incentivize people. Imagine if physical activity is not the panacea, right? But it's a huge component of how we can prevent or delay social care, and it's a viable healthcare solution. So how do we link on to that? You know, there's an untapped potential of people out there. 80% of people don't come into our spaces to engage with our fitness and leisure centers, despite those huge numbers of keeping people active, that engine room. So I guess, you know, we got physical assets still, you know, there's no way you can replace that from being physical together. There's a social aspect, a local in-person service that's accessible and delivers emotional support, you know? So I'd like to maybe, Lene, can I start with you? You know, we talked about building a bridge between treatment and prevention, and you talked earlier about vulnerable people and helping those people. What do you think we should be doing from your perspective? What are you going to do? Think what the solutions you think they are.
To get the ones who don't go to fitness now, to get them into fitness clubs.
Yep, access those people, whether that's from a healthcare pathway.
Yeah, I would say we should look at our marketing pictures.
Yep.
Do they reflect the ones we are talking about? What we have had success with is 5 weeks free, join the club on this small group for people over 55 as a follow-up to a PAHA Project Europe. And we continue to do that because we get hold on a lot of people beyond the age of 55 who would have thought about joining a gym, but now they have the opportunity, 5 weeks free, and you are in a safe group, the same group every time, 2 times a week.
Yep.
And that has been a successful way of breaking down. And I think things like that, but especially because I don't understand all data says that physical activity is great. There's so many already who have joined our gyms, and still decision makers and big part of the public still see us as bodybuilding places and a lot of mirrors, and so we must do something wrong in our marketing that keeps that wrong picture up. I think we should have a close look to that and maybe give some special products out to the general population, because it comes manyfold back by loyal members.
So you talk about over 55s, over 65s, and you start telling them that they're old and in that category, they won't buy it. So we need to be clever with what we do for the older generation. You're absolutely right.
And it's growing, right? The generation is growing.
Yeah. Right. I think there's, in the UK, 10 million people will reach 100.
Yeah. So.
Nicole, we talked about social interactions. We talked about, you know, the guidelines and accredited programming. But, you know, from your perspective, you know, what do you think goals can do, or the sector generally can do to link to healthcare?
You know, I've got 2 points of view of this, and it's, if you don't mind, there's been 3 questions that have popped up here. And for me, they're all interconnected, and they come right back to this subject.
Have a crack at one of those?
Yeah. So there's a question here talking about other industries being able to contribute to improving the overall physical health. We as an industry could not agree more. Like, if you were to take a deep dive into our hierarchical structure, you'll see we have dedicated staff members whose sole job is to go out and partner with those organizations so that there's a mutual referral system going on. But it needs to be improved. And I think that comes out of the wider realization that we're not one industry. I think the health industry and the health club industry, they're not two by themselves. It's the same industry. It's just, are we helping people be healthier now so that they need less severe health treatment later on, right? And making sure that we are working with each other openly and supportively and educating each other so that we can make sure that that lifespan of that person it's, as far as their health and fitness is concerned, it's all one in the same, if that makes sense. And there's another question in here talking about engagement, right? About the membership base that sleeps, that doesn't come in. That's not ideal from our point of view. Now, I realize, depending upon which gym model you're talking about, there might be some within the industry that want to see a very low activity, right? Let's put those to the side right now. The gym industry is constantly trying to figure out how do we encourage engagement from our members. And I think this, again, comes back to the mental health portion of it, because as Lene so accurately described, there's an intimidation factor, right? And that comes down to how we build relationships and how do we openly build relationships with people who want to come in the clubs. And the last question that had originally come up was talking about the at-home gym system and how we feel that's going to impact us. From our point of view, we're thrilled, because the more people that engage at home, that build their confidence, that build their awareness, the more engagement, the more willingness they're going to be to go out into their community and go into these facilities to help further improve their health. So I think, again, as opposed to us kind of having this silo effect that we did over the last several decades, we need to acknowledge that we all win. We better support if we further that involvement and start looking at a member or a patient or a customer as if they're on the same path with all of us.
Thorough, thank you.
Sorry.
No, great. We picked off a couple of questions as well. That's good. Andy, hopefully we're going to be working in this space soon. You know, and you already are doing some things. What's your take on linking to healthcare and the importance of that?
Yeah, it's essential. I think when we've looked at certainly from the public sector perspective, it is our purpose to, as I say, improve population health. And one of the ways of doing that that we are doing increasingly in a sort of locality level, but also on a regional level, is to link in with medical professionals, be they from hospitals or GPs or whatever, and the referral pathway. And wider than that is the social prescribing side of things, which is, again, picking up the wider system approach. It's not everything that we can do on our own. It is part of the system, and taking those referrals and then signposting people to the right solution for them. Quick example, in GM, we've been running a cancer program for the last 2 years with a little bit of transformational funding from GM Cancer, which is basically taking people with 3 different types of cancer at the moment and getting them fit for surgery and their interventions, and then helping them to rehabilitate after that. And it's been trialed for 2 years, just over 2 years, and has just been funded properly now, recurrent funding, over £500,000 a year, because it's been proven financially it's better, because people recover quicker. They get out of the hospital beds quicker, so it's tangible in terms of the return on that investment, and also people make a better recovery quicker on the upward curve. So that's just one example. So we're looking to build on that, to expand it to more cancers and to more long-term conditions, but also outside of that, for much more low-level things, if you like, less serious conditions, is working to make sure there's a very simple, as simple as possible way of GPs and others prescribing exercise, physical activity, without them having to figure out which is the right physical activity for them. Send it in, have a triage system across Greater Manchester, and then we can deliver locally, us and other partners, what is the best solution for them. And we're really getting some traction on that, and I'll hopefully be working with ukactive to expand that side of things. So that's a quick example, and in a nutshell, what we'd be hoping to do to build on.
It's a great example, and so I'm glad you mentioned social prescribing. There's another session at 2 o'clock this afternoon, going into more depth on that one. So plug for that one. Steve, can I talk to you about this area, please? Because we've spoken about this in the past as well. You've led the way here in the UK in many ways for the sector. What are you taking into Spain and linking to healthcare?
Well, I think, Teddy, it was a rather large part of my decision to opt for this particular role in this particular organisation, in that one of our major part owners, 26% of our company, is owned by Spain's largest health insurer brand, Adeslas, which is part of the Moderator Lene group. So really the integration between health and well-being is a inherent part of our organization, has always been and will always be, in that broader sense of focus on well-being and happiness. I really liked what Nicole said before about the capability of our sector to impact positively alongside other partners working in pursuit of the same goal. And Daniela earlier on spoke about our value as a sector towards things such as the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and the idea that the success of our sector is a contribution to the positive impact on society, that there aren't many more sustainable industries really than our sector. Our goal as an organization is to create a capability within ourselves to serve truly 100% of the population. And we are not at that position yet as an organization. And it drives us every day to think about, what do we have to do next from an R&D perspective? What new collaborations, what new investments, what new partnerships, what new startups can we work with? What new capabilities do we have to foster internally? What new partners are there out there that we can collaborate with? And that's pretty relentless, because where we want to get to across physical activity, diet, nutrition, mindfulness and recovery is a capability to personalize at scale using science and technology to deliver a measurable impact and outcome for each individual person, which adds up to an impact on society as a whole. Agnostic about if it's in our facilities or at home or on Mars, if Elon is successful or whatever it happens to be. But that's our goal, to do that as an organization, impact on society, and that our services are woven into the fabric of society. It's not just about one place, a facility. And for that to happen, we need a different level of collaboration. So, you know, this type of event today, this type of event organizer, this type of audience, the type of people, you know, we need to open our doors as an industry to different types of collaborations. And that's quite exciting, I feel, in the years to come.
Music to my ears. Glad to see the beat goes on, and taking it to another level by the sounds of it. Daniela, there's evidence that we're less susceptible to a virus if we're fitter. You know, surely we've got a role to play in our sectors for those people out there. You know, the physical activity must be able to help our immune system. Would you agree with that?
Do you mean preventing also viral infection other than causing viral infection, as we were talking about? For sure. Okay, exercise and physical activity and movement is able to prevent, of course, what we call non-communicable diseases, like chronic diseases, you know, cardiovascular, metabolic disease, obesity. Is really strong in preventing cognitive decline, but this is not just for elderly people. We are talking about lifelong, you know, training. So it's able to improve school performance, for example. I mean, I'm talking about scientific, robust data, not just something that we heard because of some news in the TV, okay? Is able to prevent cancers, and in addition, maybe to make you fit for surgery, or to increase the quality of life after a surgery. We know for sure that exercise is preventing at least very strongly breast and colon cancers. We know that physically active people is having a lower impact on infection, but we collected this data years ago, and we also collected data by the fact that physically active people are having a better response to vaccination, okay? There are papers from 3-4 years ago just showing very clearly that if you just take untrained people and you just do an acute bout of exercise, aerobic exercise, moderate one, And then you did influenza vaccination. The antibody reaction was, well, I mean, they had a better response to vaccination. So scientific evidences are there. So this is not the issue. And government knows. The problem is to link this aspect to the healthcare system, so physicians, to the fitness compartment. And from my point of view, one strategy is, of course, to make the fitness compartment appealing for the clients, for the patients. Lene was telling, you know, we are doing a lot of wonderful things, and I know quite well because one of the university partner in our international program is the University of Southern Denmark in Odense, and they have a lot of collaboration with Fit&Sund. So I know that you're doing wonderful things, but probably I know that the problem is that we are not just bodybuilders, we are something else. But then you should also demonstrate that together with the bodybuilders, you are having people able to taking care of different situations.
Yes.
Okay.
No,
so
we know this works.
We need physicians, family doctor from the very beginning to prescribe exercise to kids, to healthy adults, and having the connection with an appealing fitness market, having the right qualification for the right people.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I pick up?
Sorry, yeah.
You said access, right? So I'm going to pick up on one of the questions that come in here because we're running out of time, but we got time for a couple of questions, I think. There's a question about, are we actually widening inequalities in the sector? So I'll tee this up a little bit, and it's a valid question. You know, the inequalities have been exposed during the pandemic, haven't they? We're richer. How do we access people, get people into our spaces that really need that? Here, working with people like Andy in the UK, for instance, we're opening up our doors to social prescribing pathway, the healthcare pathway, and we've offered 500,000 hours to the NHS. A healthcare pathway for people who are vulnerable, complex problems to become more active if they choose. So that's one way. So, you know, in fact, we are trying to go the other way. We are trying to make it accessible for people to reach our spaces. Has anybody else got a comment on that particular inequalities comment? Yes, Nicole.
I do, and this is something that's fresh and new conversation, so feel free as a panel to pick it apart. So we were speaking earlier about DBD-BPI and how that could be valuable to us. It's also an added expense to an industry that's already been struck very hard, right? So what I'd like to see is the gyms give a little and get a little, where they turn around and they say, listen, we'll give this many memberships back to the NHS, which they can then turn around and give to patients that they need to prescribe to go to the gym, in return for some kind of subsidy or support from the government to get these units in the clubs.
Like, yep. I think we have to show, first of all, that it works. We know scientifically from Daniela it works. We need to show the business case to have some sustainability to that. But you're absolutely right. Opening our doors and offering a little bit to people who need that help is a great start. Anybody else have a comment on the inequalities? I see Angela is coming. I'm kind of running out of, that indicates I'm running out of time. I might have to pass over to Angela. Hi, Angela.
Thanks so much, Kenny. And thank you to our panel. I feel like we could go for hours. I'd also like to thank our audience for being so engaged and asking so many questions. Please do feel free to follow up with the panel on the messaging system if you haven't had your questions answered. I just feel so privileged to have had a front row seat to listening to this discussion, and it's really, really made me feel very energized for the rest of the day's conversations. As Kenny touched on, we do have our social prescribing roundtable in just over an hour, so do join us for that. And you'll see Nicole back for the last session today, looking at the connected fitness industry. So some really, really wonderful sessions. But in the meantime, I'd like to say a very sincere thank you to our panel. Thank you to Kenny for the hard work and the excellent job of moderating, and goodbye.